Hello. It's great to be here. I think I've met quite a few of you. Some people I've known for years, but for those who don't know me, thanks for the nice introduction. So I'll have the pleasure of giving some opening remarks, and I'll talk a little bit about what I think is really the role of technology, and try to paint a picture not in a very optimistic, also not in an overly pessimistic way, but in what I believe is quite balanced. Now, I got into this space of sustainability really when I heard William McDonough, an architect, talk about cradle to cradle at the beginning of the circular economy. And in a famous TED talk, he has this one liner saying, "Design is the first signal of human intention." And his entire talk is about the question, so what is our intention as a species now that we are the dominant species on Earth? Now, if design is the first signal of human intention, then technology is really the first signal of human intervention. And unfortunately, the road to hell is paved with good intentions and bad interventions. And what I want to talk about is a little bit this kind of tension between what we're trying to achieve versus what we're actually doing. This is a duck. You can buy this in the US. It comes with a warning. It says this product contains chemicals known to cause cancer. Intention versus intervention. In 2019, a group of Cambridge scientists studied the placenta and found in every single one traces of microplastics. And they suggested as a consequence that people right now are a new species because we are born with plastic in our bloodstream, already intoxicated by the pollution that we bring to this earth. 450 million metric tons of plastic. Intervention versus intention. We are creating a lot of carbon waste, of course. It's very hard to kind of visualize this, but I saw a friend of mine present at the Temasek Foundation, and he had created this visual. So this is, of course, Singapore Stadium. Gives us an idea about, like, if we would concentrate and compress the amount of carbon that we are putting into the atmosphere on a daily basis, that would be about the size of the Singapore Stadium, right? We obviously know, I mean, if you are here, you know that this is causing planetary fever, global warming, and as a consequence, again, like, we've built all of these technologies that are enabling us to do lots of great things, but have these unintended consequences, what economists would call negative externalities, that are pretty damaging. At the same time, we're also going through the sixth mass extinction event. And so this is a map from WWF showing all of the dark red orange areas, which is where we see very high levels of species extinction. A couple of days ago, we had a session here on biodiversity. But so we've built an entire economic system that is completely misaligned with how we actually sustain natural ecosystems. And again, the question is, to what extent can technology really intervene here? Couple more examples. Very recently, a couple of us had the great pleasure of going to NUS and see Johan Rockström talking about the planetary boundaries. This was a couple of weeks ago, and during this talk, he announced that now, based on their studies, the seven of the 9 planetary boundaries have now been transgressed against. But he showed this really interesting graph where we're saying, like, there is life on this planet occurs within what he calls the corridor of life, between minus 5 degrees colder than the historical average and 2 degrees warmer. He said, this is the corridor. Anything above 2 degrees, we have never done. And this is important because only last week, Bill Gates, for a very long time, a person that was really on the right side of history when it came to climate change, said, you know, we're going to be okay with 2.9 degrees. We have more important things to do in the short run in terms of human health, so maybe we shouldn't care too much about climate change anymore. Rockström said, we have 2.9 is very far out of the corridor of life. And what's important to know about this, like, when we think about climate change and the planetary heating, some of the effects that we anticipate are well understood, but many of the effects are completely underestimated. What is going on right now is the risk that the AMOC, this Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, which is a big ecosystem like underneath ocean currents that has massive impact on the weather, especially in Europe, this could collapse, which means this ocean current could stop, which has very big implications for climate change as well. It's caused by climate change, but it could also lead to significant changes in weather patterns and climates in the long run. And Rockström said about this that this goes hand in hand with some realities that people very much underestimate. When we're saying 1.5 degrees Celsius is an acceptable risk, when we're saying, well, we're not going to get there, we're going to get there this year or next year as a global average. But he told me something that I really never heard about. Said, when we think about 2 degrees increase, he said, what that means based on the best climate models, 2 degrees increase means 12 meters of sea level rise. 12 meters of sea level rise goes hand in hand with only 2 degrees increase. And yes, it's going to take 400 or 500 years. But he said the embedded sea level rise in 2 degrees is already 12 meters. Nobody is planning for this. We are dramatically underestimating the risk. And we are hoping, perhaps naively, that this trend is going to continue. And this trend also comes from Rockström, says that as we have stressed our planetary system more and more by adding more and more fossil emissions, the sink capacity of the Earth has also expanded. So Mother Earth has been very generous to us by increasing its capacity of absorbing carbon in oceanic sinks and in land sinks. But this bottom line here, the atmospheric sink, is not really a sink. And we've seen this area growing as well. And of course, the bigger the carbon concentration in the atmosphere, we're about 425 parts per million right now, the faster the planet will warm. Now, as someone who has co-founded at least one technology company, I want to kind of highlight a few things that I think give reason for optimism. In the past, let's say between 1980 and 2020, I would say, companies have really focused on only one thing, right? And that is be less bad, right? Sustainability can be summarized in 3 words: be less bad. And sustainability reports are exercises in futility where companies try to convince you to applaud them for being slightly less bad than last year. This is by and large what sustainability has achieved in terms of reporting. What we've seen in the last couple of years is the emergence of the regeneration and a pattern where companies say, well, maybe we don't have to just be less bad. Maybe we have to do things that are actually good. A difference between reducing your negative impact, your footprint, and increasing your positive impact, your handprint. And the reason why this is so important is because the world has fundamentally changed. In the goods economy, we know that about 57 companies are responsible for 80% of global carbon emissions. So this is true since the Paris Accord. And as a consequence, this narrative that companies need to become less bad and need to focus on sustainability and reducing their impact really is a narrative that is actually only applicable to 57 countries. If these companies do it, the rest is going to be fine. More generally, this is a narrative that holds true for 3 types of businesses: those in the business of making things, moving things, and mining things. These are the only 3 industries that have anything to do with sustainability in a meaningful way. Because if they change, the world can change. Now, these 3 businesses together account for about 25% of global GDP. And the big challenge has been over the last 20 years, what about every other company? Why is it so that only the companies that are responsible for environmental destruction need to do something to protect the planet? That has been the ideology of sustainability. But this is changing with regeneration, and it has to change. The attention economy, going from social media to now AI, is orders of magnitude greater than the financial economy. No, not the financial, then the goods economy. The financial economy moves more money per day than global GDP. And so if the financial economy and the attention economy can become economies that actually regenerate the planet, that restore some of our ecosystems, there is an enormous amount of hope. And this is the kind of stuff that we are trying to work on within Handprint. So what Handprint is, for those who've never heard about us, Handprint is a nature fintech company that enables businesses, primarily banks, loyalty providers, but also even ride-hailing apps and travel tech. We enable the integration of positive impact into customer interactions so that a bank can start a loyalty program and instead of miles, give you Earth points. And instead of buying cheap flights, you can regenerate the world. You can plant trees or restore corals or remove plastic from the ocean or support access to food and education. And so more and more customers are interested in this. We've seen this because in the last couple of years, specifically in the banking industry, 51% of Gen Z people in Europe changed banks. 51%. This means there's a massive and the reason why they change bank is because they're moving to a bank that is more aligned with their values. Because most banks, of course, are not. So there is a massive opportunity for the financial industry to play a role in this. And again, if we think about the value of financial flows, like this is so big in the global economy that if we can integrate positive impact into every payment, into every financial transaction, we're going to reach this budget that we need in order to protect nature and in order to fight climate change. It's a very big budget. According to UNDP, it's about $4 trillion per year that we need to spend more on achieving sustainable development goals, including, of course, nature and climate protection. But I think this is there is an enormous amount of hope here, and we see that at least in the market here in Asia, but also in Europe. The US, of course, is very difficult at the moment. These things are moving. So what I want to leave you with for the rest of the day, we have a lot of great speakers, and I will hopefully be able to stay for a part. But ask yourself this question, because when we talk about technology, too often the only thing that people talk about is, can we reduce negative impact? Right? This is typically what technology in the carbon space or climate tech, it's always about less bad, less bad. There are very important other things, right? How do we measure what is going on? How do we communicate what is going on? And what kind of technology really enables the creation of positive impact? Maybe instead or in combination with the reduction of negative impact. So keep that in mind when you're hearing other people talk, and maybe ask them difficult questions about, like, why are you only focusing on reducing negative impact? There's a lot left to be done besides that. Thank you very much.